What are the activities in the data collection? Good day, qualitative researchers. This is Jennifer, the first part reporter of the data collection report. There are 8 questions for discussion in this report. My task is to present the first 2 questions as follows. What are the steps in the overall data collection process? What are the typical access and rapport issues? As shown in figure 7.1, data collection is a circle of 7 interrelated activities. These are locating site or individual, gaining access and making rapport, collecting data, recording information, purposefully sampling, resolving field issues, and storing data. Let me bring your attention to locating site or individual. As shown in Table 7.1a, in a narrative study, the researcher needs to find one or more individuals to study who are accessible and willing to provide information and distinctive for their accomplishments and ordinariness. In a phenomenological study, a researcher has to locate individuals in a single or dispersed sites, as long as they all experience the phenomenon being explored and as long as they can articulate their lived experiences. In a grounded theory study, one has to locate multiple individuals who have responded to an action or process being studied. They may be from a single site or dispersed. When dispersed, they can provide important contextual information useful on developing categories in actual coding phase of the research. In an ethnographic study, one has to locate a single site where an intercultural sharing group has developed shared values, beliefs, and assumptions. For a case study, the researcher needs to select a site or sites to study, such as programs, events, processes, and the like. Now, how to gain permission to study the site or access, and how to build good communication with the participants or rapport. For qualitative research, access means obtaining approval from the university or college institutional review boards to review the study for potential harmful impact on and risk of participants and individuals at the site, and finding gatekeepers or individuals who can provide entry to the research site and facilitate the collection of data. There are important documents in gaining access and rapport, 2 of which are proposal, which details the procedures in the project and which should be submitted to the institutional review board as their basis of review, and consent to participate form, which includes specific elements and has to be duly communicated to and signed by the participants. A sample of the consent to participate form is shown on figure 7.2. Now, once approval from the review board has been sought and gatekeepers have been established, it's now time to build rapport or harmonious relationship with the participants or the gatekeepers and all other involved in the study for ease of communication. So to build rapport in narrative study, participants should be appraised of the motivation of the researcher for their selection. They may be granted anonymity, if they desire so, and talked about the purpose of the study. For phenomenological study, the researcher has to obtain participants' written permission to be studied and establish due courtesy and permission to have access to vulnerable individuals. For grounded theory, building rapport starts with asking due courtesy and permission for the conduct of the research with a homogeneous sample. For both ethnography and case study, good relationship with gatekeepers have to be established. One way of doing so is to provide them with the much needed information like why was site was chosen, what will be done in the site, among others. There are also ethical issues in data collection which need to be anticipated to help gain access and build rapport. One is to respect the participants in the site for research and never put them at risk. Second is to respect vulnerable population and consider their special needs. And of course, to submit proposal for review, reciprocity of the benefits of the researcher and the participants of the study have to be laid down and to develop informed consent. This has been your first part reporter, Jennifer. I now turn you over to Miss Amor.
Good evening, everyone. I am Amor Maydris. In this video, I will discuss the answers for these three important questions. How does one select people or places to study? What type of information typically is collected? And how is information recorded? For the first question, how does one select people or places to study? The answer is purposive sampling strategy. Purposeful sampling, also known as purposive and selective sampling, is a sampling technique that qualitative researchers use to select participants who can purposely provide in-depth and detailed information about the phenomenon under investigation. There are several qualitative sampling strategies available. We have maximum variations, homogeneous, critical case, theory-based, confirming and disconfirming cases, snowball or chain, extreme or deviant case, typical case intensity, politically important, random purposeful, stratified purposeful, criterion, opportunistic, combination or mixed, and convenience. Researchers might use one or more of the strategies in a single study. Looking down the list, maximum variation is listed first because it is a popular approach in qualitative studies. In narrative study, the researcher reflects more on who to sample. Several strategies could be used. The individual may be convenient to study because he or she is available. A politically important individual who attracts attention or is marginalized, or a typical ordinary person. A much narrower range of sampling strategies have found for phenomenological study. Criterion sampling works well in finding participants who have experience of the phenomenon being studied. In a grounded theory, Strauss and Corbin suggest that a researcher could use theoretical sampling in choosing participants who can contribute to the development of the theory. In ethnography, researchers rely on their judgment to select members of the subculture based on their research questions. They use opportunistic sampling or criterion sampling in selecting key informants who are most knowledgeable about a culture and are able and willing to function as representatives in revealing and interpreting the culture. In case study, maximum variation is employed as a sampling strategy to represent diverse cases and to fully describe multiple perspectives about the cases. What type of information or data typically is collected in qualitative studies? The types of data collected in qualitative research might be grouped into four basic types of information. Observation, ranging from non-participants to participant. Interviews, ranging from close-ended to open-ended. Documents, ranging from private to public. And audiovisual materials, including materials such as photographs, compact discs, and videotapes. In recent years, new forms of data have emerged, such as journaling in narrative story writing, using text from email messages, and observing through examining videotapes and photographs. Stewart and Williams discuss using online focus groups for social research. The particular approach to research often directs a qualitative researcher's attention towards preferred approaches to data collection. For narrative study, Sarnioska mentioned three ways to collect data for stories: recording spontaneous incidents of storytelling, eliciting stories through interviews, and asking for stories through such medium as the internet. For a phenomenological study, the process of collecting information involves primarily in-depth interviews. For a grounded theory, interview plays a central role in the data collection, although other data forms such as participant observation, researcher reflection, participant journaling, and focus group may be used to help develop the theory. In an ethnographic study, the investigator collects descriptions of behavior through observations, interviewing, documents, and artifacts. Although observing and interviewing appear to be the most popular form of ethnographic data collection. Like ethnography, case study data collection involves a wide array of procedures as the researcher builds an in-depth picture of the case. This refers to six forms: documents, archival records, interviews, direct observation, participant observations, and physical artifacts. Of all the data collection sources, interviewing and observing are frequently used in all five of the approaches to research. How is information or data recorded? During the interview and observation, a researcher uses a protocol to record information collected. A protocol is a pre-designed form used to record information collected during an observation or interview. This form includes heading, instruction for the interviewer, the questions, space, and the final thank you statement to acknowledge the time the interviewer spent during the interview.
Good evening, everyone. My task is to report the data collection focusing the following questions. What are the common issues in collecting data? How is information typically stored? And how are the five approaches both similar and different during the data collection? The common issues in collecting data are the following. Access to the organization. Gaining access to the organization's sites and the individual to study has its own challenges. Convincing individuals to participate in the study, building trust and credibility at the field site, and getting people from the site to respond are all important access challenges. Factors related to considering the appropriateness of the site need to be considered as well. Observations. The type of challenges experienced during the observation will closely related to the rule of the inquirer in observation, such as whether the researcher assumes a participant, non-participant, or the middle ground position. Interviews. Challenges in the qualitative interviewing often focus in the mechanics of conducting the interview. Documents and the audiovisual materials. In the document research, the issues involve locating materials often at the site far away and obtaining permission to use the materials. Ethical issues. Regardless of the approach to qualitative inquiry, a qualitative researcher faces many ethical issues that surface during the data collection in the field and in analysis and the dissemination of the qualitative reports. Final ethical issue is whether the researcher shared personal experiences with the participants in an interview setting such as in case study, a phenomenology, or an ethnography. This sharing maximizes the bracketing that is essential to construct the meaning of participants in a phenomenology and reduces information shared by the participants in the case studies and the ethnographists. Information typically stored in the following: file folders, transcriptions, computer files, and the field notes. Some principles about the data storage and handling that are specifically well suited for the qualitative research include the following. Always develop backup copies of the computer files. Use high-quality tapes for the audio recording information during the interviews. Also, make sure that the size of the tapes fits the transcriber's machine. Develop a master list of the types of the information gathered. Protect the anonymity of the participants by masking their names in the data. Develop a data collection matrix as the visual means of locating and identifying information for a study. The five approaches, both similar and different during the data collection, are as follows. Type of data collection. For case and the narrative studies, the researcher uses multiple forms of the data to build the in-depth case or the stored experiences. For grounded theory studies and the phenomenological projects, inquirers rely primarily on the interviews as the data. Ethnographers highlight the importance of the participant observation and interviews. But as noted earlier, they may use many different sources of information. Unquestionably, some mixing of the forms occurs, but in general, these patterns of the collection by approach hold true. Case study writer employ the multiple forms of the data collection. Unit of analysis for the data collection varies. Narrative researchers, phenomenologists, and the ground theory studies individuals. Case study researchers examine group of individuals participating in an event or activity or an organization. And the ethnographers study the entire culture system or the some subcultures of the systems. Amount of discussion about the field issues. Ethnographers have written extensively about the field issues. This may reflect the historical concern about the imbalanced power relationships imposing objective, external standard of participants and the failures to be sensitive to marginalized groups. Narrative researchers are less specific about the field issues, although their concerns are amounting about how to conduct the interview. Across all approaches, ethical issues are widely discussed. Intrusiveness of the data collection. Conducting interviews seems less intrusive in the phenomenological projects and the grounded theory studies than in the high level of access needed in the personal narratives. The prolonged stay in the field in the ethnographist, and the immersion into programs or events in the case studies. These differences do not lessen some important similarities that need to be observed. All qualitative studies sponsored by the public institutes need to be approved by the Human Subjects Review Board. Also, the use of the interviews and the observation is central to many of the approaches. However, the recording devices such as observational and the interview protocols can be similar regardless of approach. Finally, the use of the data storage of the information is closely related to the form of the data collection, and the basic objective of the researchers, regardless of the approach, is to develop the sound filing and the storing system of the organized retrieval of the informations.
That's all for our presentation. Thank you for listening.